Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So, cheap acoustic versus expensive acoustic. So this is my Fender CC60 SCE acoustic electric, and this was, wow, I got it originally was like 400 bucks. Now they're down to like 369 Canadian at Long & McQuaid. So great deal. And we have the Martin OMCX 1KE, brand new in Canada. You're looking at about $1,100. I got this at Long & McQuaid used for $400. Either way, it's still expensive versus cheap. So let's get this show on the road. So we'll start with the expensive one, just because it's more fun that way. Now, both guitars, of course, have some pretty aged strings on them, and I do have to change the strings, but it's still going to give you a really good reference point regardless as far as sound quality and that goes. Now, this is a made in Mexican Martin, so the neck is laminated pieces of wood. It's actually probably the strongest neck you'll ever find on any guitar. And of course they use repurposed woods for the back and the sides, and I can't remember the name of the woods, but it really doesn't matter. But there is a reality to tone wood in acoustics. Definitely is. But even just a set of strings will change your tone and sound drastically on even an acoustic. Of course, solid top as well, same as the Fender. Has a solid spruce top on the Fender. I think this one, if I remember, I can't remember what the top is on this, but it doesn't matter. So just cheap versus expensive here. We are going to use the same pick for both. So that's two of them. So this is basically, nowadays, it's, like I said, 370 bucks Canadian, or $369.99. And the Martin, of course, It's 1100 Canadian. I like them all, really, to be honest with you. Each one of my guitars has its own purpose for a particular song or songs, types of music, etc., etc. So, as a little added bonus, I want to throw in the Baby Taylor versus my Takamine. Now, the Baby Taylor, this thing cost me just under $500 before tax. It's a cute little guitar, actually. It's a lot of fun. But the Takamine is only a little bit more money, but we're also talking size difference too. So this wouldn't be a versus cheap versus expensive as far as that goes, because it's really so unfair when you're not comparing similar size guitars, because there's no similarity. This is a small 3/4 size thing, but still kind of getting used to this thing because it does have a little higher action than my other acoustics, and it's something I'm gonna have to get used to. Just the way they made this one, and actually, all the Baby Taylors are about the same for action heights. So I've checked. So like, oh, okay. Now the Takamine, I bought this brand new. God, what did I pay for this thing? Almost $600, I think, somewhere around that area. It wasn't overly expensive, but this is a pretty big guitar, really. This one is due for a string change as well, because they've been on there for a while. But that's the Takamine, you know, and you want to go Takamine versus the Martin, for example, because it's the reason I got the Takamine was because it actually beat out a $2,500 Martin I was looking at the time. So let's do another clean test of the Tak. Okay, now the Martin. Now the Takamine, in case you're wondering, it's a model GD30, and it's the cutaway, so it's GD30 CE. you ask me which guitar I prefer, well, as far as normal everyday playing, great. They're both, as far as I'm concerned, right up there with each other. Again, different sound, different tone, different music. However, when it comes to finger picking on an acoustic guitar, I will say this: the Martin definitely, so far, blows the doors off anything I've played on, even in the store for even more expensive guitars. And that's because on the OMCX, they have wider string spacing and a slightly wider neck too. So it plays really nice for finger picking like you would want on a classical, but you can do this on acoustic. So the spacing is much like a classical nylon string guitar, but having steel strings. So for anything I would want to do finger picking, this would definitely be the go-to guitar for that. And of course, even your regular strumming stuff, you know, depending on what kind of sound you're trying to create with your chords in your song and so on, right? So this thing does have a special place that way, because it definitely avoids me buying a classical acoustic. I started out with classical years ago when I first started taking lessons, and I really didn't care for it too much because nylon strings, you know, they don't stay in tune very well. Steel strings stay in tune quite well. But anyway, so Martin is definitely more expensive than the other acoustics. What I paid doesn't matter, it's what they retail new is where we compare cheap versus expensive, okay? The only other guitar I have in here that would be more expensive than my Takamine would be my Cort acoustic guitar, and I'm not even going to bother with it because even to compare it against the Martin, they're not even in the same playing field. Archback guitars are very much different, project totally different, but even at the price points, well, let me grab it. It's my only right-handed guitar, and I had to actually purchase this and learn to play righty. There's a story behind this, but I'm still not that great right-handed. But if you're looking at, you know, something in the area of about, I think this thing was about 6 something new was what I found online. Bother attempting bar chords. I'm not very good at them right now, right-handed. But this has a really nice sound to it as well. String spacing is pretty much standard for an acoustic. I actually lowered the saddle on this by a few millimeters. It was a little bit on the high side, so the strings are like, you know, just off the fretboard by, I think if I'm lucky at my highest point on the 12th fret, I'm probably at about 3.5 millimeters tops on the low E, and on the high E I'm just a slight bit lower. So, but this is a fantastic instrument. It really is. I love playing this thing, and hopefully I can get more and more into it so I can get more and more better playing right-handed. But even in comparison, I actually tonally, this thing is great, you know, even compared to the Fender or my TAC, but to be almost the same price point difference, it would have to be compared against my Takamine for retail versus retail in pricing. And I actually got this at Long McQuaid as well. I put the sticker on though. And I only paid like $200 for this thing used at Long McQuaid, so that was actually quite a steal because this guitar is in great shape. You know, so it's like, wow, for $200 I'm in. But anyways, guys, that's what I got for you today for the acoustic comparisons. Check out my video on comparing cheap electric versus expensive electrics. I think all in all, it really, to be honest, it doesn't really matter how much you are going to pay for a guitar, as long as you're aware of a few things. If you're going to buy a really dirt cheap guitar like the Rise by Sawtooth, for example, for an electric, I think you're going to have to definitely get some new strings on there right away. I would suggest if you don't know how to do a proper setup, get a professional setup done, and you know, have the strings set as low as possible without the buzz problem. Okay, it'll be so much better for you. Make sure the radius is also set. It's not just about setting heights of strings; it's about having that radius set properly too. Set the intonation up right so that it's, you know, as dead on as it's ever going to get. And you're going to have one heck of a great playing and great sounding instrument. Whether you plug it into a cheap amplifier or expensive gear, it's going to play great, it's going to sound great, you know. So you can get away with, you know, a cheaper guitar, but you're going to have to put a little bit into it. Where a more expensive guitar, even expensive guitars, you still need to set them up initially. Like even, well, my Fender, you know, we had to set the neck relief on it. You know, that was about it. There's not a lot you can do with an acoustic, right? But the intonation was fine, string height otherwise was good. Just the neck relief had to be set. And of course, a new set of strings never hurts, right? And, you know, that's pretty good. You know, coming right out of the box is decent that way, right? But all guitars need a setup. All guitars need maintenance from time to time, especially electrics. Okay, they're more critical in settings and stuff than acoustics will ever be. But you can actually set up a really cheap guitar to play extremely well, regardless if it's acoustic or electric. It can be set up to play really well. It's just kind of your thing where, do I want a really cheap guitar or do I really want an expensive guitar? But really, does it actually matter? In the end, kind of not, but kind of yes, because there are some cheap guitars out there that are not so cheap that cost more than a Rise by Sawtooth. Take a look at my video on the Silvertone electric guitar. Now this thing sells for over $200 and some on the internet, brand new, and it comes with, literally, I'm not kidding you, razor blade fret ends. I mean, the thing was horrifying. I did do quite a bit of work to that thing to dial it all in and get the frets taken care of so there's no more sprout and razor blades, because I wouldn't even give that to my worst enemy, okay, out of the box. All right, it's just, that's just not right. So how the factory lets it out of there, I have no idea. I mean, and they charge over $200 for that guitar, where you can get a Rise by Sawtooth that may have 1 or 2 fret ends, maybe 3 tops, okay, because I think that's about all I found was just a couple of fret ends more near the higher end that had just a little tiny bit that had to smooth out, and that was it. You know, set up the neck, set up your intonation, your heights, your radius, new set of strings, and man, that thing plays like butter. It's a nice little guitar, you know, and it sells in a whole kit for like $129 on Amazon.ca. Probably far cheaper, of course, from Amazon.com. But anyways, so there you go. Cheap guitar for acoustic versus an expensive acoustic. A little bit of extra for you in this video, as well as you will find in the electric guitar video. I did a little bit of extras for you guys, even though the 2 main comparisons were actually the Sawtooth, because it was the cheapest guitar, versus my Gibson Les Paul, which is my most expensive guitar. Just hearing them, it's kind of like, wow, they're so very similar. You know, and even a very cheap Chinese pickup sounds very comparable to the expensive 57 Classics in my Les Paul. Anyways, guys, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching. If you've not subscribed, please subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos on music, gear, and everything else that I do on this channel, I'm doing things as I can and have time to, and weather dependent too for the outdoor activities. But that's kind of how we roll. So anyways, see you later.